The glass crunched under my boot, but I wasn't even surprised. It was the third time this week. Father silently took out his notebook. He didn't scream. He just wrote down the time and the cost. I didn't know yet that this notebook was worth more than this entire house. And I definitely didn't know who actually broke the window. In the morning, the kitchen looked like a crime scene, though it was just water. The faucet was sheared off, soaking the new cabinets I bought 3 days ago. I stood in my pajamas, the water freezing, ankle deep. Elias, my father, sat at the table. He was dry. He was drinking coffee and watching the timer on his phone. He didn't help. He waited for me to shut off the valve. My hands shook as I turned the rusty lever under the sink. When the noise of the water stopped, a silence fell that was worse than the flood. Mara, my mother, walked in with a rag, but didn't give it to me. She started wiping the floor around Father's chair. She said quietly, not looking at me, "Again, Damien, we discussed that you shouldn't touch the plumbing." I tried to object. I said I was asleep. I said I hadn't been in the kitchen since last night. Elias sighed loudly, opened the blue binder lying in front of him, and clicked his pen. That sound, the click of cheap plastic, made me nauseous. He wrote, 0715, faucet failure, damage to parquet, denial of guilt. I looked at those words upside down. They looked like a verdict. I started to believe that maybe I was a sleepwalker. Maybe I really did it. We spent the next 4 hours bailing out water. No one spoke. Mara worked with a martyred look, every movement screaming about how much harder I made their lives. I bought this house 2 months ago. It was my pride. I invited them to stay while they renovated. Now I felt like a guest in my own hell. I went to the garage for tools to try and fix the faucet temporarily. My toolbox was open. The wrench I needed was in the wrong compartment. It was greasy, covered in oil. I wiped it on my pants. When I returned to the kitchen, Elias was on the phone. Seeing me, he lowered his voice. "Yes, insurance. No, it's him again. Yes, we are controlling the situation. No, the policy is in his name, but you understand the risks." He hung up and looked at me with pity. "Damien, the insurance might deny it. Too many incidents in a month." I gripped the wrench. The broken window last week, the wiring short on Tuesday, now the water. I asked why the wrench was oily. Elias frowned. "You took it yourself yesterday to tighten the bike. Don't you remember?" I didn't remember. I haven't owned a bike for 3 years. At lunch, I tried to work. I'm a graphic designer. I only need a laptop and silence. I sat in my room, door closed. Suddenly the internet cut out. The router was in the hallway. I went out to check. The wire was cut, neatly, cleanly, right under the plug. I stood and stared at that cut. It couldn't have happened by accident. No furniture was moved. We don't have rats. I went to the living room. Mara was reading a magazine. Elias was watching the news. I showed them the wire. "It's rats, Damien," Mara said without even looking. "Old houses always have rats." I said the cut was smooth, like from scissors. Elias slowly took off his glasses. "Are you accusing us?" His voice was quiet, dangerous. "We pay for food, we clean up your flubs. And you accuse your mother of cutting wires?" I felt reality drifting. Maybe I caught it with my foot. Maybe it was tight. I went back to the room and started looking for electrical tape. In the desk drawer, I found a receipt. Yesterday's date. Handy hardware store. Item, side cutters reinforced. I had never been to that store, but the card used to pay was mine. I checked my wallet. The card was in its place. I checked the banking app. The transaction was real. 2:30 p.m. At that time, I was on a Zoom call with a client. I was definitely home. I couldn't have bought cutters. Cold sweat ran down my back. Someone took my card, drove to the store, returned, and put the card back. It could only be one of them. I decided to say nothing. I went downstairs, pretending to look for water. The blue binder was on the table. Elias went out to the garden. Mara was in the shower. I had 30 seconds. I opened the binder. It wasn't just a list of breakages. It was a chronology of my madness. First page, July 12th. Forgot to close garage. Tools stolen. I remembered that day. I closed the garage. Second page, July 15th. Lost car keys. Had to call a locksmith. I found the keys 2 days later, in the pocket of a winter jacket I hadn't worn in 6 months. The entries were kept with pedantic precision. There were even my emotional breakdowns that I didn't remember. August 3rd, yelled at mother over soup. I never yell at my mother. I photographed the last 2 pages. My hands shook so much, the first shot was blurry. I heard footsteps on the porch. I slammed the binder shut and stepped away to the fridge. Elias walked in, wiping his feet. He looked at me, then at the binder. It lay slightly askew. I saw his gaze catch on the corner that wasn't aligned with the table edge. "Were you looking for something, Damien?" he asked. I took out a bottle of milk. "Just milk," I said. My voice betrayed me with a tremor. Elias walked to the table and adjusted the binder with one finger. "We need to talk tonight," he said. "The situation is becoming unmanageable. Mother and I are worried about your cognitive health." Cognitive health. The term sounded too medical, too prepared. I went to my room and started Googling power of attorney laws. If I'm declared incapable of managing assets, who gets control? Next of kin. Parents. The house was worth $500,000. My savings, another $100,000. They weren't just living here. They were preparing for a takeover. I texted a friend, Kale. "I need you to come over, now." The message didn't send. Wi-Fi cut. Mobile network showed no signal. "We have bad reception in our area, but zero?" I looked out the window. In the garden, on a tree, hung some gray box. I knew what that box was, a signal jammer. Cheap, Chinese, but effective for 20 meters. I bought the same one 2 years ago for the office to block phones during brainstorms, but we never used it. It was in a box in the attic. They found it. They cut me off from the world. I felt a rush of adrenaline replacing the fear. Now I knew. This is war. I couldn't go down and rip it off. They'd know I know. I needed proof, not just a photo of the binder. I needed video. I had an old action camera, a GoPro I used for filming hikes. It was small. I started feverishly searching for it in the closet. It wasn't in its place. Of course, they searched the room. I rummaged through all the drawers. Found it in the dirty laundry basket at the very bottom. Battery dead. Memory card empty. I put it to charge. Hiding it behind a stack of books. I needed to hold out until evening. I went downstairs. Mara was making dinner. She was chopping vegetables with a huge knife. "Help set the table, sweetie," she said affectionately, as if she hadn't looked at me like dirt this morning. This shift in tone was the most frightening part. Dinner passed in tense silence. Only the clinking of forks. Then, Elias put down his fork and wiped his mouth. "We contacted Dr. Vance," he began. Vance was an old family friend, a retired psychiatrist. "He agrees to conduct an evaluation. It will carry weight in court." I clenched my fists under the table. "What court?" I asked, trying to speak evenly. "Guardianship," Mara answered. "We don't want this, Damien. But you are a danger to yourself. Today water, tomorrow gas. We must protect you." They spoke about stripping my rights as if it were a done deal. "I won't sign any papers," I said. Elias smiled, with just his lips. "You don't need to sign. We just need to prove a history of incidents. And we have it. And we have witnesses. Neighbors saw you running around the garden at night. I didn't run, but I knew they could have hired someone to run in my clothes. Or the neighbors would just believe them, sweet elderly people." "A notary comes tomorrow," Elias said. "We will draft a temporary power of attorney, voluntarily. Or we call the orderlies now. Your choice." It was an ultimatum. I said I needed to think. I asked for the night. They exchanged glances and agreed. "Until 9 a.m., Elias said. I went up to my room, the camera charged to 40%. That's not enough. I took a portable battery, connected the camera, and hid the whole setup in the ventilation grate in the living room. I did this while they were clearing the table. The grate faced directly onto the sofa where they usually sat in the evening. The angle was perfect. I hit record. The red light blinked and went off. I disabled the LED. Now I needed to provoke them. I had to leave the room, so they would relax. I slammed my bedroom door upstairs loudly, turned on music and quietly, without shoes, went down the back stairs to the basement door. There was a crack. I could hear but not see. I heard Mara turn on the TV. Then the sound of glass breaking. I froze. "Quiet," Elias hissed. "He'll hear." "Music is playing," Mara replied. "Do it faster." The vase needs to look like he hit it with his elbow walking by. I heard them moving furniture. The scrape of sofa legs on parquet. Move it here, Elias commanded, to block the path. Then it's logical he tripped. They were creating a scene, modeling reality. What about the binder? Mara asked. I made the entry, Father replied. 9:45 p.m. Antique vase broken. Aggressive behavior after conversation. My heart pounded so hard I feared they'd hear it through the door. I went back to the bedroom just as quietly, turned off the music, lay on the bed fully clothed. I couldn't sleep. I waited for morning. At 3 a.m. I heard my door open. I pretended to be asleep. A flashlight beam passed over my face. Mara. She stood over me for a minute. I controlled my breathing. Then she walked to my desk, took my phone, and left. They took my phone. Now I was completely isolated. I only had a laptop, but without internet it was useless. Although, the camera. If I can get the camera before they find it, I have a trump card. Morning started with a scream. Damien! Oh my God, Damien! Mara was playing an Oscar role. The vase, a gift from my grandmother, lay in shards in the middle of the living room. The sofa was moved. Did you go out at night? Elias asked sternly. I heard a crash. I looked at them. They looked tired and disappointed. The perfect picture of caring parents exhausted by a psycho son. I was asleep, I said. Where is my phone? Elias took it from his pocket. We took it. You were calling someone in your sleep. Ravings. The lie was so dense, you could suffocate in it. The notary is here in an hour, he reminded. Go wash up. I went to the bathroom, turned on the water for noise, and ran to the living room. They were in the kitchen. I stood on a chair, removed the vent grate. The camera was there. Hot, but working. I pulled it out, shoved it in my pants pocket, returned to the grate. When I walked into the kitchen, Elias was drinking coffee. Are you ready to make the right decision? He asked. I nodded. Yes, I'm ready. The notary, Mr. Graves, arrived exactly at 9. A fat man with sweaty hands. He spread papers on the table, next to the vase shards, which were intentionally left uncleared. Sad sight, he noted, nodding at the porcelain. Yes, Damien is having a hard time, Mara sighed. The document was titled, General Power of Attorney with Right to Manage Real Estate and Accounts. A total transfer of my life. It's a formality, Graves said. So parents can pay bills while you receive treatment. Elias leaned closer, tension radiating from him in waves. I looked at him. Can I see the incident log before I sign? I want to understand the scale of the disaster. Elias was surprised but handed over the blue binder. Of course, awareness is the first step. I opened it to the last page. 9:45 p.m. Vase. I took the camera out of my pocket. Can we cross-reference this with the video? I asked loudly. Graves froze. The smile slid off Mara's face. What is that? This is a recording of what happened in this room yesterday at 9:45 p.m. I connected the camera to the laptop sitting on the table. Graves used it for typing. I turned the screen to the notary. The video clearly showed an empty room. Elias and Mara enter. Elias pushes the sofa. Mara takes the vase, lifts it high, and throws it hard onto the floor. The crash was deafening. Then they stand and discuss how best to arrange the shards. Graves turned pale. He looked at my parents. Elias didn't move. His face turned ash gray. Mara started gasping. It's a deepfake. He's a computer guy. He drew this. I paused at the moment Elias writes in the blue binder. Is this graphics too? I asked. The log is in your hands, Mr. Graves. The handwriting is fresh. The notary slowly gathered his papers. I cannot participate in this, he said dryly. This is attempted fraud. He stood up. Elias grabbed his arm. Sit down, you don't understand. He is sick. We are just helping. Graves yanked his arm away. I am obligated to report this to social services and possibly the police. He walked out. The door closed behind the notary. The three of us were left. The silence was ringing. I expected apologies, tears, anything. But Elias just sat down and opened the binder again. He looked calm, terrifyingly calm. You made a big mistake, son, he said. You disgraced the family in front of an outsider. I couldn't believe my ears. You tried to steal my life. Mara stopped crying instantly. Her face went hard. We raised you. We invested everything in you. This house is our investment. You owe us. The masks were off. There was no concern for health, only money. Get out, I said, right now. Elias chuckled. This is our house as much as yours. We have tenant rights. You can't kick us out without 30 days' notice. They prepared for everything, even the failure of Plan A. I picked up the phone. Graves forced them to return. You have 10 minutes, I said, or I send the video to the police. Attempted fraud, forgery, property damage. Elias stopped smiling. Tenant laws work, but a criminal case is different. He knew he'd lose. He stood up, neatly closed the blue binder and tucked it under his arm. You're ungrateful, he spat. They packed in 8 minutes. Mara broke one more plate on the way out, on purpose, looking me in the eye. When their car drove off, I locked the door with every lock. I sat on the floor among the vase shards. The house was quiet. Water wasn't running. Wires were intact. I was alone, and for the first time in 2 months, I felt safe, not crazy. But I knew the first thing tomorrow I'd change the locks, and buy a dog, a big one. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like it, and click on the bell so you don't miss any more stories. See you soon.